welcome to the Snowflake Sports Podcast. It is 7:19 on the dot Eastern Standard Time on May 6th, and I am joined by New York's finest. It's Chris Amato. How are you doing, Chris?
Hello. It's always great.
So, just to go over what we have planned today, we're just going to pretty much talk about Chris's teams, and when we talk about Chris's teams, the New York Knicks, just because they've been on fire. The past couple months, though, they lost a pretty bad game to Denver. We'll get into that. And then the New York Rangers had a very interesting week, to say the least.
Gloves dropping.
So it's just wild to start off. But so the New York Knicks, they've lost, I think, like twice in the past. Like they lost, I think they're 8-2 the last.
I think the
10
last
games.
13 games, right?
Yeah, they lost one random game. I think in like April 9th or something.
They lost to the Suns before the Nuggets, and they lost the Nuggets last night at the time of this recording on the night of May 5th. And then they got the Suns again in Phoenix. They're on this this very ass end of the season, like West Coast trip or mountain time trip, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, they'll be in Phoenix tomorrow night, which is, maybe even tougher than the Nuggets. So, and if they want to stay out of the play-in tournament, you can't really afford to lose that. So you got to get one of those games, and hopefully they can handle the Suns. I think they'll have the size advantage at least. I think they can rough them around a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we'll see about that. It's just can Julius Randle, keep carrying this team, and I think it's
yes.
Definitely the answer is yes.
Yeah. He's just a new guy. I mean,
yeah.
And you look at him, I think some people who, if you didn't follow the league closely, you might think like this is a guy who came out of nowhere, right? I mean. Yeah, I think a lot of people might know, like, he came out of Kentucky, like, anyone who's a first-round guy out of Kentucky, I think he was, like, the guy after Anthony Davis, so, like, in the 2013 draft, when he one and done. And really for most of his career, especially his last couple of years with the Lakers, and maybe even the last year, maybe even when Kobe was still there, his last season, like, he was kind of turning into, like, a double-double guy. And so, to me... And yeah, a couple of years ago, it was not only disappointing, but like seemingly fatal to the franchise that he was the only guy that they signed in that 2019 free agency class. But, I think I was a little bit more optimistic about his signing than just like they were going to get a guy who can who's going to bring it every night. And really what changed was he's averaging 4 or 5 more points a game. The 10 plus rebounds are still there. I think he's like a 23 and 11 guy, 24 and 10 or something like that. And his shot just got a lot better. And it just goes to show you that there's a lot of guys in the league where, in any sport really, any of the major sports, I feel like there's a lot of guys who are really good at one stat and maybe decent at the others. But it's man, if they just got that one thing together, whether it's, their shooting or their passing or whatever, he can be something very different. And he's just a guy who went and put in the work to do that. I mean, all the stories that have been put out there over the season of him, completely changing his diet, running miles barefoot outside, which I don't know what that does other than just
makes it tough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's badass, I guess. I don't know how that makes you a better shooter, but I don't know. But his shooting just got better, and that's probably just from hours at the gym and maybe really trusting a change in mechanics. And then, of course, Thibodeau himself, which, I'm literally on record on your show at saying that he was my preferred choice of coaching candidates last year when they were looking for guys. And that's, I think, been proven to be a pretty good feeling because I had a feeling that of those coaches, Thibodeau was the guy most likely to just squeeze the juice out of whatever this roster could bring. So far so good. I mean, another thing too was that I think it was last week. I don't know who put it out there. I don't know if it was a tweet by just a random writer or The Athletic or whatever. They showed the efficiency charts, and I think the Knicks were third overall in efficiency in the whole league.
Oh wow. Okay.
Maybe I think third or fourth on offense and first or second on defense. And I'm oh my God, if these kind of stats are relevant, if that's something that can be predictive, it's they can knock out anyone realistically that's below the 2 seed. I mean, they can knock out the Bucks. I think they definitely knock out the Hawks, who they're slated to face if the playoffs started today. And I think they'd be expected to knock out the Hawks if they do face them, because I think that's kind of a mismatch in their favor. There's really only a handful of teams that are like, okay, the Knicks can't get by them for sure in the playoffs, from what I'm seeing right now. That's a big change even from 6 weeks ago. They looked like a team that, up until pretty recently, up until I would say when Julius Randle brought back his braids. That was the big thing, because they had a bad losing streak where he was just letting his hair go. When he brought his braids back to where they were earlier in the season, they started winning again. And then when D Rose came back from his injury, I think they're like 24-10 or 11 when D Rose is in the lineup.
Oh wow!
And he's been a solid 3-point shooter now. The whole team's improved their shooting, which isn't something I think people attach with Thibodeau teams, whether that's fair or not to him. Because they usually think of him in defense, but the whole team's gotten better at shooting, and R.J. Barrett as well. You look at R.J.'s stats, his average stat line for the season, and it's he's 2 points a game more, 2 or 3 points a game more, maybe another assist or a couple more rebounds. But you watch him, and it's wow, this is a guy that can take over at certain points of the game, and has, especially late in the game. So yeah, really, for that's the easy part, right? with all this space that they'll have, this is a team. When you're ahead of schedule, that's the cool thing, is that all of a sudden you have a lot of money to play around with, and they have a really high floor to start from. So nothing but good vibes.
Yeah, for sure. And you were exactly right on Randall's line. He's 24-10 guy. The thing that really jumps out though is he's averaging 6 assists right now, technically 5.9,
yes,
which is double than the highest he's done before, 3.1 the last 2 seasons. So it's he is getting everyone else involved, and that also helped. Like you said, R.J. Barrett is shooting better, Derrick Rose is shooting better. Emmanuel quickly when he plays is shooting pretty well. So it's when everyone else they have some spacing, he could actually find people. But his 3-point shooting to me is just ridiculous, because I never thought he was that good of a 3-point shooter. And then not only is his percentage is up, but his the rate at it that he's shooting is up too. So it's just one of those ascensions that I didn't really see coming. I always thought Julius Randle was a good player. I didn't think he was good enough to carry a fairly below average team talent wise to almost potentially a first round win in the playoffs.
He's he's basically turned into a Karl Anthony Towns type player. That's basically that's kind of the player he is, forward who can score over 20, is getting boards, and can facilitate a little bit, can be unselfish, this kind of complete player who's not like a LeBron type who can go up to 10 assists a game when he wants, whenever he wants, it seems like. But, I definitely more like a Karl Anthony Towns type, or any of the, the great young forwards in the league.
Yeah.
And another thing too is that they've survived. It hasn't been all, these perfect stretches where everything's just bouncing away. They've been able to survive, not any crazy terrible injuries. D Rose was out quite a while. Mitch Robinson is supposed to be a big part of their team. Yeah, he's gone for the year. Maybe if they make a really good playoff run, he can sneak back, but I don't think that's going to happen, even if they do. And also, you mentioned Quickly is he started off the season really hot, and he's great, and I'm very excited about him, but it's at first it looked oh, this team is going to kind of ride or die with Quickly's early development. And he's taken steps back. Not to the point where I think it's concerning long term, because he's 19 or maybe 20 at the oldest. But they've been able to survive that. Nerlens Noel is third in the league in blocks per game since he stepped in for Mitch. And that's a part of coaching too, I think, is that they've been able to survive these waves of misfortune that, maybe in a lesser team or maybe with a lesser coach, they, maybe would have slid a lot further down into the standings to where they'd be a 10 or 11 seed, where the Raptors are.
Oh, throwing shade. Oh, you
No,
finally get it.
it is what it is.
I mean, it is like the first time in like 10 years where the Knicks are better than the Raptors. Maybe not 10,
It
like
is.
7,
Yeah,
but
well, we got
like
to celebrate. Maybe like 7.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's more like
Yeah.
7. Like that 2012 team, I think was better. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry about that. So I was looking at efficiency ratings on ESPN. It's like this Hollinger stats. I don't know if this is a guy or like the actual efficiency. So the Knicks are fourth in defense efficiency, which to me makes sense, is because they like that's just a Thibodeau team, just like giving out like a ton of effort. But their offense is like 21st, which is kind of lower than I thought they would. Like I don't know. I feel like they've been shooting well this entire time, or at least the past like month or so. Um, and and there was like some weird stat like flying around. I think like the Low or Zach Lowe reported it, where it's like the Knicks gave up like the most open shots like on the floor or something, but like their field goal percentage was the lowest. It was, and people thought like, oh, like they'll just start making those shots, and like this defense will like become more average, and it just hasn't. And I think people have, or teams against them have obviously made more shots, or made more open shots against the Knicks, but like the fact that their defense is still like top 5, I really just shows you
Yeah.
how like just in the zone they are, which like I don't think there's been a Knicks
They
team.
close in on guys
Yeah,
so fast. Like
yeah.
watching them the last few years. I mean, few is an understatement. I mean, last 7 or 8 years of being really bad. It was an immediate difference, like within the first or second game. Like just noticing when the other team has the ball, it's like there's a nick right there. Like there's so few mental lapses that like you notice that in the individual lapses where a guy is like wide open underneath or a guy is a wide open shot. Like everyone is closing in on somebody at all times. And yeah, like in the first half of the year, that was kind of at first the haterade a lot of people were kind of putting out there was that like, okay, they're lucky is one. They're putting out missing a lot of open shots, which has nothing to do with the Knicks. Which, yeah, okay, I was like, fine, maybe that's true. I don't know. But then also they were like, well, their second half schedule gets a lot tougher. Um, and which is something I don't know, I've never really like believed in that outside of like in like college football, because I'm like, you know what? You don't know how tough the schedule is. You don't know when they're going to be catching some of these teams. You didn't know that they were going to be playing against the Lakers without LeBron and AD, which was one of the games people pointed to. You don't know what slumps other teams are in when the Knicks come up against them, or what improvements or who the Knicks might make, or who might be healthy for them. So like the whole like tough schedule part of it, I didn't really buy into, but I think that's what's been surprising for me is like all of a sudden, like yeah, like they've been able to make up ground on the fact that they were a little bit lucky when it came to just being open shots. Um, but I think it's just because they don't make mistakes and they block a lot of shots. Nerlens Noel, I mean, he's a force down there. I mean, he's had not only just a high volume of blocks, but I mean some highlight reel ones that you'd see on like Sports Center or getting tweeted out there, for people. So I mean, I don't know. There's other than the fact that they absolutely still need another guy, if for this to mean anything. I don't even want to say the word championship, but because it's too much to think about.
So, okay, do you think they walk over the Hawks? Like, do you think that's like a gentleman's sweep, or is it like a competitive series?
I mean, I always say 6 games is a cop out because that's just someone who like doesn't want to definitively say who's going to win.
Yeah.
It could be 5. I mean, I just because when they played the Hawks. I mean, I think at least 1 or 2 of those games was pretty earlier in the year. When maybe they didn't look as good, they were relying a little bit more on like luck when it came to teams missing those shots. But like, I just feel like they're so much deeper with like just good all around players. I mean, the Hawks got a lot of good players, but like they don't have a Julius Randle. They don't have guys with like length who can score. They have guys with length who can block and rebound. Like Clint. They don't have they have a Clint Capella. Guys like that. But outside of Trae Young, it's like, who do you really got to look out for when it comes to scoring? They got to watch for RJ Barrett. He can take over sometimes, and he has. They got to watch out for, or even quickly can score some. They got to watch out for Derrick Rose, who can pop off. I mean, he had 25 points off the bench the other night. I think last weekend. So they just got more guys that are scoring threats, which you didn't expect to say about them. Even after we realized they were pretty good, that's not something you expected to say about them, but they do. They have a lot of guys of a lot of different sizes who can score. I think compare them to the Hawks, I think the odds are that they'll face. It looks like whether they're the 4 or 5 seed. And I just think it's a bad matchup for the Hawks. So yeah, I could see it going 5 games.
Yeah, so I mean, you're missing the fact that like Bogdanovich is there too, and he's averaging like 15 a game. He's like a lights out
That's
3-point
not
shooter.
a scorer though.
He's a lights out 3-point shooter though. And if you just have spacing all around you, then like they could drill threes and just wipe the floor with the
But then
Knicks.
that's their thing. The Knicks are probably the best team in the league against
True.
three-pointers.
That's a good point.
It's
Yeah.
like they've neutralized those kinds of guys. The guys that they haven't been able to neutralize are the guys that can just slash right through you. Guys who can stop and pop. Guys who can score from anywhere. Superstars basically. Those are the teams that even when they started beating good teams that they still struggle with. They have trouble against Kyrie Irving. Because they'll be all over Kyrie and then he'll just like be horizontal and he'll still make the shot. So they lose to teams like that who have guys like that. But there's, like I said, there's only a handful of teams that can bring that. Maybe Devin Booker tomorrow. He's a guy that can definitely do that kind of thing too.
Or Jokic just tearing them apart as well. But
Yeah,
he does that
I mean,
to everyone. So.
Jokic, who passes like a point guard. Who I think is Jokic like top 5 in the league in assists right now.
Oh, probably. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, so I mean, guys like that who are star MVP candidates year in, year out, who can score from anywhere, are producing offense through a number of different ways, through assists or whatever, and I mean, maybe Trae Young is one of those guys. I don't see Trae Young putting up Kyrie type shots, at least not yet. So, and as long as they know how to stop you, and there are ways that they can do all the right things and have it work, which is most teams, then, I just don't see a team like that beating the Knicks 4 out of, unless someone gets hurt, unless Randall gets cold, which he did a little bit after the All-Star break, when he didn't have the braids.
It's all in the braids. That's all.
Which shouldn't be an issue anymore, and I think he knows that because he's kept the braids. It hasn't been like an on and off thing during this 11 out of 13 stretch that they've had. It's been consistently there, and hopefully he keeps them once the playoffs start.
Yeah. I guess just a stat check again. So Jokic is 6th in assists per game. He's at 8.4. He's behind Westbrook, Young, Doncic, Chris Paul, and Draymond Green.
7th, it looks like. Because Russ is first.
Yeah.
Russ has 11.
11.
Russell Westbrook is another triple-double season for Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Especially
He's
on the
all-
Wizards. Like, how does he do this on the? Well,
Not only
actually, that
that,
makes more
they're
sense
like-
because he has more room.
They're in the play-in tournament. Like, they can go to the playoffs.
Oh, they're absolutely that 10 seed. The Raptors are, I think, 11th, and they're nowhere
They're 3
near.
games ahead of the Raptors. They are... Yeah, I mean, they just blew out the Pacers the other night, so I would think they're gonna beat the Pacers in a play-in game. They can definitely beat Charlotte if they lose to the Heat. I don't know if they beat the Heat. I think the Heat would just lock down and win that game.
Oh
but,
yeah, I don't think either of those teams. I think Charlotte would also beat the Pacers or the Wizards too. Like,
I think the Heat would beat the Wizards for sure.
Oh, that could. I don't know. Well, Scary Terry, man.
I think Russ is the X factor there.
Oh, Russ is great, but it's just
Russ is the X factor that would put them over the Hornets.
I don't know, man. What about Gordon Hayward? He's been there before, too. You got LaMelo Ball doing his thing.
Gordon Hayward.
He's been great for the Hornets this year. Like, this is kind of why they're up there.
Look at what Gordon Hayward's been doing. Let's look at this here. What do we got? Where is he on here? Oh, there he is. He's injured, first of all.
Oh, wow. Look at me.
He hasn't played since April 2nd. He's always hurt.
Oh, that's fine. Whatever. He'll be back.
But when he is playing, he's 19.5 points.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good
19.5 points with what do we got? 5.9 boards and how many assists we got here? And 4 assists.
Solid.
That's an average player.
That's a solid player.
it's solid. I mean, he'll always have a job in the NBA. I mean, that's what those stats mean. But like, that's not a guy who can get in the way of Russ. I don't think. I think it's going to be a. I could see a Heat 7 seed. Well, I mean, not Heat. I mean, it could be the Celtics too. Or worst case scenario, the Knicks or Hawks if they really slide these last few games.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty
But
close. They are only 2 games
seven
up.
seeds, one of those 4 teams. Yeah, it's only a couple game difference.
Yeah.
And then the 8 seed, I would think, is the Wizards. I think the Wizards can beat the Pacers or Hornets. Barring a miracle run by the Raptors.
Well, yeah, that's not going to happen though, because they
or the Bulls. The Bulls with their new star Vucevic.
such a weird. Because like at that signing, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna push for the playoffs, and they're just kind of.
They're like, yo, we're making a push.
Yeah.
They're like, Bulls are back.
The Bulls are back. We're the 3rd biggest market. Here we go, baby.
Let's go. Yeah. Is there any team that is more defined by one man the way the Bulls are by Michael Jordan in the history?
Absolutely not. Maybe like I'm just thinking like the Colts and like Peyton Manning, like they've just.
But they had fucking oh my god.
Oh, Johnny Unitas, you mean?
Johnny Unitas,
right?
Yeah,
yeah okay, that's a good point.
Baltimore. I mean that's pretty much it though. They had Marshall Faulk. I don't know. He was an MVP before Peyton was there.
What about the Knicks? Right, Walt Frazier. He's like
the Knicks have had multiple generations of like Hall of Fame players. Not so many titles, but I mean the '90s Knicks. I mean Michael Jordan wasn't around, right? I mean. Who the fuck knows what would have happened?
The Knicks.
It just sounds like a cop out if Michael Jordan wasn't around because he was.
Yeah.
But like, most franchises when they're having a good stretch don't run into an all-time best player or the all-time best player. So I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, is there another franchise in all of sports where one guy is just he is it?
So
he's the whole. Barry Sanders with the Lions, but like they didn't do anything.
What about Gretzky? Gretzky with the Oilers?
No, because they won a cup after Gretzky got traded in 1990, and he got traded in '88, and then Messier won a cup with them in 1990 when he was still with the Oilers before he went to the Rangers.
Okay.
So like, I mean the Oilers you would think, but then even then, I mean they went to the cup in 2004. I mean, 2006 actually, and now they got McDavid, so.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lions and Barry Sanders, but man, even then, I mean, the Matt Stafford and Kelvin, the Megatron years, I mean, they probably had just as many playoff appearances as Barry Sanders did.
Well, I mean, the Lions though, you have Megatron. That's a pretty.
Yeah, like player. They had that era where and Ndamukong Suh when he was at his best.
Yeah.
Even though he's solid, but he was like on a Hall of Fame trajectory for a while with the Lions.
Yeah.
It really is.
No, it really is just Jordan and the Bulls.
So weird. I mean, there was that couple of years of D Rose and Thibodeau got to a conference final, but that was so short.
Well, wasn't that when he blew his ACL though? Like
that was the
or the year
MVP.
after.
That was the year after he won MVP. Yeah. 2012.
Yeah. That was just sad because that would have been a fun like him versus LeBron or something. My God. But
that was the thing. It's like, man, is D Rose the best point guard ever? Is he the new AI?
Yeah.
Is he a bigger AI?
Yeah.
That was the kind of conversation he was in.
But look, it's come full circle because now he's on the Knicks and now he's like a pretty serviceable player, which is
serviceable. Yeah. Well, this is the I think once he got to the Timberwolves, which I mean, when Thibodeau was also there too, he's entered like this new phase of this like Zen Rose. He's like this like peaceful like
takes the ball up slowly like
yeah like he's like his like overall demeanor like, and I think he even like talked about it at one point where kind of just saying not that he doesn't care but like he's just kind of at peace with the fact that he's not going to be a superstar player anymore. I mean, I'm sure as it would with anybody that probably eats you up even years after the fact, but he kind of settled into like the role that he does have with the T-Wolves. He had that big 50-point game where, he's all crying or whatever after the game because, he's a very emotional guy, it seems like. And I think with the Knicks, he's enjoying that even more. I mean, all these, Barrett and Obi and Quickly have all told multiple stories to the press about, D-Rose constantly giving them advice during the game, after the game, before the game. working out, practicing, specifically with them. The fact that he wanted to be there with Thibodeau on the Knicks when the Pistons got rid of him. So it's just a cool, mixture of things. I think that kind of, then again, it's up to Thibodeau to really bring all that together. But like the fact that you had to have Randall be that committed, you had to have D Rose in this kind of state that he's been in. I think these last 3 years, the Zen Rose, that's kind of what I call him. He's just like this peaceful being who's just trying to ball within his limits, that his now accepted limits. And then, just good moves by, getting quickly in there, which they almost didn't do apparently, from, I think, some reports that have leaked out was that Worldwide Wes, I guess, not broken, but like kind of barged into the draft room or whatever and was like, no, we have to get quickly.
Oh, nice.
You guys can't get someone else, because they were going to get someone else and be the Knicks. So yeah, I mean, it was, it was a lot of mixture of things, like with any good team. So hopefully that continues. I don't know. I only got to Oladipo in free agency, and that's the other thing. Speaking of him, was the trade deadline. I was kind of like, okay, they didn't do anything, so they're definitely gonna hit a fucking wall. And they didn't. They've only got better, and the Heat with Oladipo fell behind the Knicks, who did not get Oladipo. So, that's pretty interesting, and I wonder what that'll do to Oladipo's value, or, the Knicks' potential interest in him. Kind of freaks me out that people are acting like the Knicks, really want Lonzo Ball, whether that's true or not. I don't understand that. I wouldn't mind having him, but, this idea that he's coveted. You should
not really
covet Lonzo Ball.
No, not.
Well, I don't understand what's going on with all that, even if he's a great teammate or a leader or whatever. I don't know what it is they're talking about, but
well, it might be the defensive side too, especially with Tibbs and Lonzo, that. I feel like could just lock in,
Still want to pay $21 million.
Oh yeah, no. Ball. If you can get him cheap,
which is what it sounds like would happen.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna pay him that. That's. I feel like that's generally speaking what a lot of teams would have, because that's just how NBA contracts are now. A guy like that who's a consistent a starter on most teams, you're gonna, especially at a point guard position. But I feel like a lot of the reports of a month or so ago, especially around the deadline, were oh, the Knicks want Lonzo Ball bad. I was like, did you just pull a name out of a hat?
Yes. The answer is probably yes.
But just because he's just because they had some buzz a few years ago with their dad or whatever, I don't understand that. Why would Lonzo Ball and the Knicks be connected? Especially when you got a prospect and quickly. You got Derrick Rose, who I think can play like this, the way he's playing for another couple of years, at least. I think Elfrid Payton's expendable, but Thibodeau loves him, so who knows how long he'll be around.
Yeah. No, they're probably set on Lonzo. The only reason I think that story exists is because there's no free agents this year, so they're just trying to create buzz just because, it's New York. It's the market.
Yeah. I hope so. I really don't want it to be let's do it to do it, because it's okay, then what about the next year?
Yeah.
Or maybe the next year's trade deadline, if who knows who might be available. What if I don't even know who I don't know who the 2022 free agents are, but I'm sure some of those are 23 free agents even. Maybe one of them might be available at next year's trade deadline. And I'd rather have space to get those guys than just pick up Lonzo Ball $20+ million a year just because there's no one else. I'd rather pay Oladipo, because I think Oladipo's upside is much higher. And, and if you're going to have to make a move like that, at least do it at a position where, he's had flashes and he's been, just like everyone else on the team, really outperformed himself. But, Alec Burks can't be your top shooting guard. Can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it if you're going to win a title. That's not how it's supposed to be.
What about RJ Barrett, though? He's coming in his own, right?
He's a small forward, though.
Is he a shooting guard? I thought he was a shooting guard.
No.
Ah, okay.
Maybe he's played that kind of swing position a lot, but a lot of forwards have started to do lately. But
okay. My bad.
Oladipo is one of the purest examples of like an exact kind of thing they don't have and haven't had in a long time. Um, he's kind of like an Allen Houston type guy, a shooting guard who can put up maybe in the low 20s, high teens pretty reliably. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind that, although I'm sure that might not work out though, especially given how the Heat were the ones who went and got him.
Yeah. I don't see him leaving really because it's just like he's in Miami, he's
That's
in a
not
big
like
city.
people seem to leave the Heat.
Yeah.
People seem to stick around there.
Yeah. Especially with like Jimmy Butler, how they made the finals last year. Like I think he's like in a good
Yeah,
area.
and a lot of their problem, and they might sneak when they get in the, if they, they will get in the playoffs, but they might be a team that looks like they're kind of weak getting in, and then maybe they'll get someone, maybe it'll be a 6 seed and knock out the Bucks.
That would be wild. Miami Heat have
Same
not
teams.
played well, really. Well, they played better of late, but like they started off like so poor.
I could absolutely see. In fact, if I was betting and it was like not much money and there was a high upside to it, I would bet the Heat to knock out the Bucks.
Why are you so down on the Bucks? Like they've been playing great.
I'm not.
Drew Holiday has been like
It's
like the exact player they
probably
need.
wouldn't. But I'm saying like the Heat are a team just because they were in the finals literally last year, and it's like the same roster plus Oladipo. Like
Yeah, but it's the Bucks roster plus Drew Holiday. I'd rather have Drew Holiday than Oladipo. I think.
yeah, that's true. I mean, I could just see it happen.
Okay.
If I had to
Yeah,
put
that's
$10
fair.
down and the odds were like, oh, put $10 down and you'll win like $25,
Right.
I'd be like, fuck yeah, dude, why not?
Yeah, I
They're
guess
the
it's worth it.
defending conference champs. They're running the conference still. It's 6-3 series. I wouldn't pick them to beat the Nets if they have all their guys.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, fuck the Nets.
Brooklyn.
This is a fuck the Nets podcast.
Fuck
Almost-
Brooklyn.
They're the Amazon Prime Video of super teams.
So they're
of
a
NBA
very
teams.
good streaming service that.
Well,
Just
they're
spits out
like,
fire.
you look at them at like a surface level, and it's like, oh, they have some like hit shows that people like. They got The Boys. They got
Marvelous
I can't
Miss
think of
Maisel. I don't
they
care.
got fucking honestly a ton
Yeah.
of shows. But then when you're actually using it, you're using it regularly, you're really trying to navigate it. You don't like it.
That's fair.
There's no charm. There's no charm to the Amazon Prime Video app. It feels like just things were just dumped into it, and it's like fine. It's entertaining because it has, some of the best stuff out there at the top level. But overall, it's like, man, this doesn't give me the same feelings that Netflix does. Or a Hulu even.
So,
Where
all right.
we have a distinct look that people feel like some sense of attachment to for whatever reason.
So if you had to compare, like, for my opinion, like the Lakers are probably Netflix. It's just like the one that you know and you stick with, and it's just like they're always consistently good, except for those couple like 6 years, like post Kobe
Yeah.
kind of thing, or like the end of Kobe and then like post Kobe. So like who would you say is like the Hulu of the NBA if you
Hulu would be,
just like annoying
Man.
ads if you have that?
I'd say the Bucks.
The Bucks. Oh, because they're just
Yeah.
like a little lower
They've been
tier.
pretty good for a while.
Yeah.
They're never going to be the best at, probably. It's very likely. I mean, there's times where it's like, oh, wait a minute. They got really good movies. They got some of the best shows. At least the best. Hulu's thing, though, is that they're like syndicated shows a lot. They don't have like the best new shows.
Yeah.
Shows, that's kind of their thing is like, if you want to watch Always Sunny forever and ever, then that's your app. And I think they used to have The Office. But anyways, that's kind of, to me, the Bucks are Hulu. And also they're both kind of green or whatever. So that's another,
Stick it to the
that's
color
kind of what
scheme.
brought me to it. But yeah, like, I wouldn't say the Nets are like one of the, fucking Apple or whatever, because like no one gives a shit about Apple TV.
Oh, wait, hold on. So, like, my girlfriend has Apple TV for a year because I think she upgraded her phone. We started watching the
Yeah.
Ted Lasso show with.
Yeah, they have that.
That's
which
kind of
people-
great. Like, that's
that's
a
one
fantastic show. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
knock Apple TV.
But that's one show.
That's true. But don't they have
Like-
one with Rob McLerney? I can never say his name. The guy from Mac from Always Sunny. Like he's a show on there.
That's not an exclusive though. That's on FX.
Well, Oh,
Yeah.
so is that that's not on Hulu though? I don't care if it's on FX. That's cable. Like fuck that shit.
Yeah, but like I'm talking like exclusive shit.
Right. Okay.
Like
That's fair.
you have to have this app to watch this show.
Yeah.
But although, and again, when I mean the lack of attachment, it's also this is the interface. Like Amazon
Oh,
Prime
okay.
Video,
Yeah. You're talking about like the
because
GUI.
like Amazon, the reason you don't follow Amazon Prime Video is because the app
It's
sucks.
terrible. I haven't
Oh,
had it
like
in forever, but I remember how bad it was. But
yeah, like you just want it doesn't even like work sometimes. I can't use the TV app on the app for it on my Roku just doesn't work
yeah,
at all. And I have to cast it to my TV from my phone if I want to watch Amazon Prime.
that's the worst.
Yeah. So like that's the other thing. And that was after I already was just like this app sucks. You're just moving around and like the way things are ordered, it kind of like lies to you about like what you're actually able to watch. You're like looking at stuff, it's like, "Oh my God, look at all these cool movies." And then you look and it's like, "Oh, this is through like their fucking
Oh yeah,
Showtime."
you had to like rent it, right?
Yeah, you have to like, yeah, they're like not anywhere near as clear about like what you actually have access to, even when you're like in your account that you pay. Well, I don't pay money for any of these, but other people do theoretically. So, but yeah, like that's the other thing. It's all this bullshit, and the Nets are bullshit. Nobody likes the Nets. Everyone
Oh,
who
I
is
love the
rooting
Nets.
for
I
the
love this
Nets,
team. Go Kevin
no,
Durant.
everyone who's rooting for the Nets is doing it to like just prove some point or just to be like, no, I like teams that are just good. I just like good basketball.
Hey, some
It's
people
like
could actually like Kevin Durant and like think he's like the best
KD
scorer
suck. KD is
that
a
we've ever
no.
seen. And maybe
KD
some people
is
don't hate Kyrie. Maybe people think that he's like trying to be a good person, and the media just fucking has this giant lens around him, and he might not be able to handle
no,
it. So
no. Kyrie is an asshole.
no,
He
he's a great
is.
person. No, shut up.
I think his heart's in the right place. I with on some things. But like I don't know that whole thing I talked about it in your show that whole thing where he's like, oh, we should play like I'm gonna do a bunch of like activism stuff, and then it's like, oh, my activism is just dumping a bunch of money, which is nice to do, but it's like that doesn't take
Ooh.
up time.
Okay, I mean, didn't he donate like a ton of masks to the Seahawks? I can never say that right. Seahawks tribe reservation or whatever.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
paid for
yeah,
like
like
all of the WNBA salaries. Like I don't know what else. Did LeBron do that?
I get it, yeah, but then he's just like, oh, I'm just not gonna play this week because I just don't feel like playing.
Because
You
basketball is
know,
meaningless. Okay.
I'm not gonna talk to the, but it's like, well, that's what he's there for. He's getting paid like $30 million, you know, money that comes from the fans, to do that, or to whoever the fuck cares about the Nets, whoever's giving the Nets franchise money, it's coming from them. Um, and maybe none of it will matter, I mean, and look, and the other thing too is like he's not one of those guys who acts out and you can say like, oh, he can't, he's not clutch or whatever, because he's proven he is. I mean, no one will ever forget that shot in 2016. Um, but like that, none of that's likable. None of that's likable. KD is not likable.
James
James
Harden is
Harden was
not.
never likable. And also, the other difference with these super teams is, and I realized this the other day, is that it is and I think it gets overshadowed because people are so fatigued with the conversation over the last 12 plus years since the Celtics and the Heat formed their teams. Um, but like the Nets actually are the kind of caricature of these super teams that I think people tried to portray the Celtics or the Heat or those Warriors team as, right? And to some degrees, that people criticizing those teams was fair or not fair in some cases. But the thing that all those teams had was that they all had a actual base of, the Celtics, the Heat, the Warriors. They all had a guy or guys in a culture that was already there and then brought in, KG and Ray Allen and LeBron and Bosh and KD and the Warriors. They were adding to an already pre-existing culture. The Warriors already won a title before KD. had won a title and I think gone to another title right before they got KD. Um, the Heat were a playoff team with D Wade the year before they got LeBron and Bosh. Might have even won a series. And then the Nets are just like,
Okay.
oh, Steve Nash is our coach. We're no matter what the record ever is, I don't care. We're the fucking B team in New York City. We're the undercard team. We're gonna throw in Steve Nash as our coach, I guess. Which, yeah, maybe he's good at it, but it's just fucking clearly a name grab. And then we're just gonna dish out all the players and just to get rid of them who actually made us a decent team before any of this, who are homegrown. And we're just going to add these star guys that have no connection to the city, no connection to each other than just maybe knowing each other because they're from all-star teams or whatever. And that's it. And we're just going to see what happens. So, like, there's nothing to like there. I mean, obviously they're good, because they're good players, but I don't know. It sucks. I hate them.
I forgot what I was going to say, honestly, but so, like, with the super team stuff, though. Like, they did have a pretty good culture with, like, D'Angelo Russell and, like, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, and all that stuff. So it's like, they, like, made the playoffs. They lost, like, pretty much every
but they're gone and the coach is gone.
Right, but they had the culture there, and then they
got the coach fired.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But, like, they got him fired because he probably couldn't handle the superstar. He was more of a, like, developmental coach.
I think it's because, like, no, we don't know this guy. And this is the same, LeBron's been guilty of this, too. We don't know this guy. He's not in our little fucking cool kids club, so he's out of here. Give us a guy who's in our cool kids club.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Look how good the cool kids...
It's all hack bullshit.
Look how good the cool kids are. They're a second seed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, Steve Nash knows what he's doing, I mean... And just like when LeBron would have replaced the coach, because maybe the coaching doesn't really matter that much when you got established guys like that who... not only can ball, but are at a Hall of Fame level, but are experienced as well and know, how to approach certain kinds of teams and certain kinds of styles and how to beat them. But again, none of it is that they suck or that any of this is like, may even catch up to them at some point in the playoffs. It's really just a matter of like, it's just exhausting, It's just like, this is so just fake. It's just, it exists just because, like, they just decided it should exist. It's not organic. It's not like, I don't know.
Well, they wanted to play in New York, just not under James Dolan. Which
just
pisses you off, but like.
You go to New York, but it's like, let's go to the team that no one fucking cares. I mean, when KD got signed, he goes to the fucking, I don't know if I think it was a Mets game right after that summer.
Oh, really?
And the stadium booed his ass.
That's great.
In his own city.
Well, because like 90% of New Yorkers are Knicks fans, and the other like 5 are like transplants from Boston.
And this is the second time he's done this.
Yeah.
It's like that's what also does it. It's like, oh my god, dude, again.
But
and
like,
I know hard.
I don't know. We should stop talking about this because this is just like an overblown story that like everyone's hit on. But
it's good. Well, if it's the Knicks Nets in the playoffs, oh my god.
Oh, I can't wait. There's gonna be so many Knicks fans in Brooklyn.
Oh,
like all those tickets.
Oh, dude, people are gonna die. I think people are gonna get so hurt.
All right, so we got the Rangers. I don't know. That was a terrible transition, but like they've had a circus of.
Speaking of New York.
Yeah. So like. I'll try to give a quick synopsis so that Chris can just kind of go into it. But like, so Monday happens, they play the Capitals, and they're getting killed. I think the game ended up being like 6-3, but it like wasn't even that close. And there's a little brawl, and this guy Tom Wilson, who's like just a total goon, he goes and he chucks the crown jewel of MSG, who is Artemi Panarin, just like on the ground without a helmet. And I believe he punches him on the ground and like doesn't get a penalty. And they just kind of like break up the brawl, just like whatever. Then Tuesday happens. They fine him $5,000 for roughing up Buchnevich, who like yes, that happened, but like this guy should have been suspended at least one game because they literally played yesterday on Wednesday night.
He's a repeat offender. I mean, he's been doing this his whole career.
Yeah, offender as well. And that's not even the wild part that he doesn't get suspended. Then the New York comes out with a statement saying that the rules, like aficionado, whatever that name is like unfit to rule and like should be fired and like this is like a disgrace to the NHL, blah blah blah. Then Wednesday rolls around, even before the game, they fire their president and GM from the team, John Davidson and Jeff Gordon, and then they play this game where they like the first like the puck drops and like three of them start fighting. There was 100 penalty minutes in the first period of this game. This whole story is just like so dense and so ridiculous that like everyone knows I don't really pay attention to hockey except for like through my girlfriend through Rangers stuff. So this has been like the wildest like 3 days of hockey that I've seen in forever. So I just kind of
well, the thing is too, again, as a Ranger fan perspective, is that like, I mean, really since the lockout in the mid 2000s, and especially over the last few years, the Rangers have like started to emerge as like this, especially in a league that is, or of the franchises in the NHL. For those who don't pay attention to the league, there's more instability in that league as far as like general managers and coaches than any time. There's more coach firings per year. There's so much turnover in terms of front offices and coaches. And I think in any sport, I mean, you still have those handful of guys that, maybe they've been a GM for 15 years or whatever, but it's mostly guys that, there's a high turnover. And the Rangers have avoided that for, even in the early 2000s, when things were pretty bad for them. They had Glenn Sather, who was the GM from 2000 until, maybe 2017. And since then, they put out this letter, what's called The Letter. And in fact, Chris Drury, who is now basically running the team, who was the assistant GM before these firings, and who's been, a lot of other teams have been wanting to interview him over the last few years whenever they've had GM openings, and the Rangers are like, no, fuck no. So that's what they think of him. Came out with this thing called The Letter in 2018, basically telling Ranger fans out in the open, like, hey guys, we're going to suck for a while. We are getting rid of players who you probably really like, and we're going to do everything we can to be as good as possible very soon. But that's how it is. We need to get rid of these guys so that we can do that. And they did. And coupled with luck, I mean, they got a number 2 pick and then a number 1 pick in back-to-back seasons in the draft lottery, despite not being one of the worst teams in the league. They were teams that were a few games out of the playoffs both those years. And despite being the youngest team in the NHL, and they become a model of just a solid plan and stability. And up until a few days ago, that was the case. And then, apparently these firings had nothing to do with the statement that went out about wanting to fire the league's, head of discipline, George Peros. And it's seeming more and more like that's true, because apparently James Dolan, who seemed like he had nothing to really much to do with the Rangers. I mean, the whole, usually he just doesn't give a shit about the Rangers and just focuses on fucking up the Knicks. But I guess the Knicks are too good to fuck up right now, so
he can't do that. So he's got to change it up.
He got bored, yeah. So I'm gonna fire the guys that have led a pretty fantastic rebuild, and not just a rebuild, but a rebuild where they go and sign maybe one of the biggest free agents ever, Artemi Panarin, who has been nothing short of an MVP caliber player every second of his now 2-year Ranger career. And they got rid of him. They got rid of Jeff Gordon, who was, the heir apparent to Glenn Sather. So I guess the good news is that, Chris Drury is still kind of he's part of that system, It's not like they cleaned house and just brought in an outsider. Chris Drury was kind of always supposed to be the guy in this position eventually. He's only 44, pretty young in GM years. And he's been there a long time now. What this means for David Quinn, I don't know. I kind of hope they keep him, but I don't really care either way. I don't think he's a crazy good coach, but, just for the sake of some stability, I think it'd be fine. I don't think any of this is his fault. But as far as Tom Wilson goes, it's like, well, obviously, I mean, he's been suspended for 20 games before, not that long ago. Um, he went and punched Pavel Buchnevich, a bunch of times in the back of the head when he was on the ground from behind, a fight that Buchnevich had nothing to do with and didn't instigate. Then he pulls Panarin down from his hair from behind, and he lands on his head and is out for this rest of the few games of the season. And this is one of the league superstars. So he's a guy who doesn't just do cheap shots, hit in the head, but also seems that it's against guys that are not like fighters. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these guys would fight when they're presented the opportunity, but it's like these are guys that are like skill players. They're scorers. They're fast skaters. They're not guys that are like expecting to play that role on the ice. So it's kind of he's not picking on guys his own size. So it's all just really stupid. A lot of really stupid. Stupid's like the nicer thing to say, but there's a lot of like these. You'll see this in hockey, probably even in football too. Just a lot of these fucking assholes that like try to like make themselves seem tougher by thinking that what Tom Wilson does is like good and cool. Like being tougher by proxy in some way. Like you see a lot of fans like, oh, you're a pussy because you don't think that like attacking people from behind is good and cool. And it's like, yeah, man, you're the tough guy because you're like weird, have this parasocial relationship with like a cheap shotting asshole in the NHL. Yeah, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
So like, there's all those kinds of fans too, who I think the league feels some level of pressure to appeal to an extent. But like, I don't think the sport would like. And again, I think the sport is trending up with the ESPN and Turner deals. I think it's great for the sport to get out of what NBC Sports did. I mean, they did what they could to keep the sport alive and still hang in there as a top four sport pretty convincingly since the lockout, which the league still hasn't fully recovered from. But I think being on like ESPN next year and for the next 7 or 8 years and on Turner with TNT, who I think they're pretty good at putting on like a fun broadcast.
Oh yeah, the NBC broadcast is not great, right?
No, dude, it's 3 guys just standing there saying the same shit over and over again.
What was it? I think what was it last night? I think they brought up the was it? There's some like pizza place that like Chris Drury owns in like southwestern Connecticut, and they just think they're like, oh yeah, I ate it there. They talk about that like all the time. I forget.
One of the Ranger writer guys, I think Joe Fortunato, he was saying, yeah, there's like some pizza place, and hopefully the team is as good as this very hyped, whatever this place is called. I guess it's really hyped. But yeah, like the cool thing about Drury too, I think they kind of have a lot of instant respect from Ranger fans, even though he was a good leader, but he kind of underachieved after he signed there from the Sabres. Was that he retired and allowed the Rangers to have a lot of cap space instead of like taking all the money he could. He was within his contractual rights to say like, fuck you, you signed this deal and sorry that I gotta eat cap space, but that's how it is. But he retired, cap space was freed up. They were able to go and get Brad Richards. They were able to go and get Rick Nash the year after. And it started a 5-year run where they had 3 conference title appearances and went to a Stanley Cup because of the foundation that they had with that cap space from Chris Drury's contract that he voluntarily gave up when he didn't want to play hockey anymore. And he's been with the team ever since. So like, I guess I'm worried about the perception this has. I'm worried about what this might mean for coaching. I mean, there's I think Gallant, who led the Vegas Knights kind of miracle expansion team run. He's out there as a coach. I wouldn't mind getting him, and I'm sure he'd want to come. So I guess we'll see. They have a lot of decisions to make about keeping some of these young guys because they're the youngest team in the league, and they're if they were in any other division, they would be a playoff team this year, and I think everyone knows that. So If anything, they might have overachieved. So
Yeah, I
we'll
mean,
see.
they have so much upside too. Like even that Keandre Miller guy at defense is like,
Adam Fox is like one of the best young
yeah,
American defensemen ever.
which is so weird
He,
because the Rangers never have good defensemen. So it's like,
but yeah, usually yeah, not defensemen who like score at
yeah,
least. I mean, he's putting up Brian Leach numbers statistically. I mean, he's putting up numbers, of really the only great two-way defenseman the Rangers have ever had, and one of the best two-way defensemen ever. He's a Hall of Famer, won a cup with them, won a Conn Smythe that year in '94 when they won it. So, and Adam Fox is looking like that kind of guy. I mean, he dishes, he does everything he can. So, and that's a huge foundation. And they're still not done bringing guys up. They still got a couple more guys in the pipeline. And they got a top 10 goalie in Shesterkin. And of course, they have Panarin and Zibanejad. So, I've calmed down a little bit about it. But I calmed down about every crazy, stupid thing. I calmed down about the Khalil Mack trade. I didn't think I ever would about that. So sometimes things just kind of work out.
or the Porzingis trade that somehow the Knicks have won 2 years later.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was mixed about that at the moment that happened.
Yeah.
There was like a 3 hour stretch where I was like, what the fuck, man? And I was like,
Wait a second.
nice, dude. And then I was like, fuck. Then I was kind of like, all right. And as I'm watching, I'm actually have the Nets Mavericks game on TNT on right now. And right as you said, Porzingis, where do you think he's? What do you think he's doing right now?
Shooting a three, just hanging out on the key, top of the key.
Nope, worse than that.
What, bench?
Yep, just sitting there again, clothes on, mask on.
What?
Classic Porzingis, that's his favorite position, left fucking bench.
Injured, as always.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Screw him.
All right, I think that kind of ends at least the sports stuff. So we've been ending podcasts with like TV movie recommendations. Chris, do you got anything up your alley?
What do you mean by TV?
So just like anything you're watching. So like, okay, I'll go first. So like,
Okay.
we've been starting to watch that Ted Lasso show on Apple TV, and that's been like a great show. And if anyone doesn't know what Ted Lasso is, Jason Sudeikis stars as a former football coach from like Wichita State, which is like a Division II program in football, and he comes over and he coaches for like a fake Premier League team. But he knows nothing about like soccer, and like the owner and like his wife, they got like the owner was in an affair, and then the wife, they ended up breaking up. So like she just wants this team to like tank kind of thing. But then he's like being like
Yeah, well, he's like he coaches soccer, right?
Or in England. And I don't know, it's just very entertaining. It's very funny. It's like a good story kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like good quality TV that like I feel like I haven't seen in a while, especially in like a comedy, like from the past like 2 or 3 years. I feel like it's just been kind of B-rate.
No one makes funny shit anymore.
Right? Yeah, it's always like drama stuff or like documentaries have like blown up.
Everyone's pissed off.
Yeah, everyone's mad.
I know. I would say, I mean, I guess I really just watched it because like when you have a girlfriend, you're just trying to look for things to watch sometimes. But we watched the show. I think they're doing another season, although it would also work well if they didn't, just based on how the season ended. The show called Made for Love on HBO Max.
Okay.
And there's this woman who was after one date married this like billionaire guy. This like he's very kind of psychotic in a way, but like very like possessive and controlling. And right off from the very first opening of the first episode, it's she escaped him. And first, it shows how she escaped because he had this app that he was going to put out with his company. He's like very reclusive, and they live in like this compound, this huge compound where it's like all this like artificial like sky, kind of like Truman Show style kind of thing, artificial sky. And she like has lived in there for like 10 years, ever since like the moment she married him. She was like this fucking disaffected college student, and he just picked her up on a date and just married him, and they've been living in this compound. And long story short, he experiments his new product called Made for Love on her without her knowing, where two people are connected and are able to know what the other is like feeling and thinking so that they can always just be honest with each other about each other's feelings, which is obviously psychotic, but like he doesn't care. And once she finds out that it's in her, she escapes, and then, I guess the show is kind of what happens after that.
Okay, so that's like a first episode kind of thing.
It's kind of like a dark comedy. There's definitely a lot of like funny parts, and honestly, the billionaire guy, as it goes on, not that you root for him ever, but he's definitely like a much more like a funny character who you don't like hate.
Chris loves billionaires. That's what
he's like. He's a very like goofy character, like in terms of like how repressed and psychotic he is, and how like clueless he is about the outside world because of how secluded he's become. And it's just kind of funny how like that plays out it's only like 8 episodes, but I think that's a show a lot of people would like. I'm not going to say something generic or stupid like Mortal Kombat or something.
Or what was that? Kong versus Godzilla?
Yeah, Godzilla. I saw that in theaters actually. That's a movie actually that as long as you go in there with low expectations, you'll be surprised at like how fucking like, surprisingly cool and creative it looks.
What?
Especially the second half of the I mean the previews make it look like, oh, they're just fighting among buildings and then the movie's over. It's like, no, like there's like a lot of like almost like fantasy elements to it. Like especially in the second half of the movie, like it gets pretty fucking wild and trippy a little bit.
I mean,
and that's really cool. Yeah.
I'm not gonna watch it.
And then like the villain of the movie is also like really cool. Who you'd see if you saw it. It's pretty nice.
Gotcha.
I liked it.
Okay.
Mortal Kombat though, the fight scenes were awesome. I'm glad they kept it as like an actual martial arts movie with martial artists and shit. But like, man, could they really should have just wrote it better and just handled it better, all around. But it's a video game movie, that's how video game movies go.
Yeah. The Witcher, right? Best video game content.
That's the best video game adaptation that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And season 2 comes out at the end of this year. So I guess for recommendations for late 2021, I'm automatically putting up Witcher season 2.
Yeah.
Only on Netflix.
Oh,
the Lakers.
The Lakers. All right. Well, Chris, thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure, especially when your two teams are like dominating pretty much.
Hey, Raiders had a decent draft too. I'll toss that out real quick.
Yeah.
Raiders had a decent draft. I think they'll be all right. We'll see.
This is 2021 year of Chris Sports. Here we come.
Yes, it's all coming back.
You can follow us on Twitter at Sports Snowflake. You can follow us on Instagram at Snowflake Sports Podcast. You can follow Chris at Chris Crossover. Take out the E. So Chris Cross OVR. And you can follow me personally on Twitter at Lucky Profession. But thank you, Chris. I'm your host, Dan. This has been the Snowflake Sports Podcast, and keep them takes soft and snowy.